All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. Thanks so much for being here with me today. I'm your host, Nolan. We got an important topic today to cover. We will be reacting to Donald Trump's interview from the other night with Laura Ingraham over at Fox News that is getting a lot of attention on social media. It's pretty much gone viral at this point, and there are a couple different reasons for that, and there are a couple clips that have really made the rounds the last couple of days that we'll cover and we'll react to here on the show today. And mainly, these topics in the clips are focused on the job market, on housing, on the immigration, H1B program. I've given my takes on all of these from time to time on the show, and I'm going to really focus on these today. And we'll also discuss why it is that the MAGA base specifically, is feeling very upset by the answers that Donald Trump gave in this interview and by the policy of the last couple months surrounding these issues. So we'll talk about all that today and more on the Quest for Clarity podcast.
Americanism, not globalism.
I am not a slave. I am a free citizen.
There should be no Federal Reserve System.
Only America first.
End all of these wars. America is trying to play empire. We want everything released, and you're actively covering it up. It's not America first to be pushing our influence in areas where it shouldn't be. We're run by people that don't understand what they're doing and don't understand the ramifications of the policies they're enacting. That's an incredibly dangerous situation. All right, everybody, before we begin, if you wouldn't mind going right down below this video and hitting like and subscribe, I'd really appreciate that. It helps me out a lot. Also, if you wouldn't mind going to my Instagram, X, and Spotify accounts and giving all those a follow, I'd really appreciate that as well. But let's get into the main story that we're going to be covering today, which is this Donald Trump interview with Laura Ingraham. Now, the reason that this interview has been getting so much attention online, and it's really gone viral at this point, at least the clips of it have, are because he covered a lot of these issues. And Laura Ingraham actually, to her credit, pressed him on a lot of these issues, like we'll get into here in a second with the H1B Visa program, the 50-year mortgage, the 600,000 Chinese students coming here on student visas. These major issues that have caused the base really to question what's going on here. And it's a lot of these topics that have sucked some of the energy out of the momentum that we got just about a year ago from this second Trump election, from the second term. And even if you just look around, if you look on Twitter, if you look on Instagram, if you just look out and about, the energy that we saw, remember the energy from election night 2024, just about a year ago. Remember the energy and the momentum that the Trump administration was getting thrusted into office with. There was the entire culture, whether it be the podcasters, whether it be the sports, the entire culture was with the Trump movement, with the MAGA movement for the first time ever. Because if you think about the 10 years of this movement, the entire time, pop culture, Hollywood, the mainstream media, all of it was against it. All of it was on the left. And for the first time in this whole movement, for the first time in these 10 years, it seemed as if the culture had finally shifted to the right. And there was this big sense of momentum. You had RFK Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard, former Democrats who crossed the line to join the Trump movement. You had people in the middle, all these podcasters that were very much behind this new administration. And if you look at the sentiment now, if you watch Joe Rogan or Theo Von, these people that very much supported this new Trump administration just a year ago, if you go look at the sentiment now, whether it be because of immigration or these wars or the economy, which we'll get into here really in a second, the energy is not there anymore. And it's these topics which Laura Ingraham presses him on that are part of the reason for that, as well as what we've covered here every day on the show pretty much, which is the foreign wars that we were promised would end and have not ended. But let's get in here to this interview because I think it encapsulates really what feels missing from the old, really 2016 rise of Donald Trump, this idea of America first, this idea of we are going to make America great again. It's the entire slogan. And there was this energy about it, this risk-taking energy about it that does not seem to be there. It seems as if we've changed up now and we're playing it safe. We are playing this classic political game where our enemies are the radical left, not what it used to be, which was, at the start of it, was the establishment Republicans, like Lindsey Graham, who we're now endorsing. People like Marco Rubio, who are now the Secretary of State. Things have changed, and it's important that we address some of these changes. And for someone whose political rise was based largely on the topic of immigration, that leads me into my first clip here from this Laura Ingraham interview, where he is defending now keeping a lot of the H1B visa program in place. Take a look at what Donald Trump had to say to Laura Ingraham when she asked him about the fact that we are still keeping this H1B visa program very much in place. Take a look.
Does that mean the H1B visa thing will not be a big priority for your administration? Because if you want to raise wages for American workers, you can't flood the country with tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of foreign workers.
You also do have to bring in talent. When
we have plenty of talented people here.
No, you don't.
We don't have talented people here?
No, you don't have certain talents, and people have to learn. You can't take people off an unemployment line and say, I'm going to put you into a factory where we're going to make missiles, or I'm going to put
How did we ever do it before?
Well,
I'll
give you an example. In Georgia, they raided because they wanted illegal immigrants out. They had people from South Korea that made batteries all their lives. You know, making batteries are very complicated. It's not an easy thing and very dangerous. A lot of explosions, a lot of problems. They had like 500 or 600 people, early stages, to make batteries and to teach people how to do it. Well, they wanted them to get out of the country. You're going to need that, Laura. I mean, I know you and I disagree on this. You can't just say a country's coming in, going to invest $10 billion to build a plant, and going to take people off an unemployment line who haven't worked in 5 years, and they're going to start making missiles. It doesn't work that way.
So let's just assess the switch up here on this topic, because if you remember back in 2016 and 2020 and even 2024, which is much more recent, so we shouldn't have forgotten that at this point, the message is, we're talking about factories here, the message is supposed to be that there are people in Middle America, the forgotten men and women in Middle America, whose factories have left them, whose jobs are now taken away and exported to China, and now they're left, these people who were working in factories, like he mentions there in this clip, the Hyundai factories where people from South Korea were working, who we now supposedly need. But we were just saying years ago, and just minutes ago really, that there were people in Middle America who were just sitting there waiting for these factory jobs. And now the argument is that we need to export, or we need to import people from the rest of the world to work these factory jobs. The case that was just made years ago was that we had people in Middle America whose jobs had left them that were waiting and praying that these jobs would come back. So which is it? Because we were all told that if we brought the factories back, if we gave American people these jobs, then we'd have booming industry and all the rest. But now the case is being made that American people are too dumb to work in factories? Because Laura Ingraham's asking him, she says we have talent in America, which we do. I mean, we're the third most populated country in the world. Of course we have talent. If we don't, there's a major problem. Of course we have people willing to work in factories. And he literally says, no, you don't have talent. That's crazy. Even if it's just the messaging from 2016 is that the people of this country are furious because they're willing and able to work in these factory jobs, and because of people like Obama, Bush, and Clinton, those factory jobs have been exported to the rest of the world. That was the argument. And now the argument 10 years later is that the American people are too stupid to work in these factory jobs. They don't know what they're doing. So the energy from I am your vengeance, I will take the country out and I'll bring factory jobs and put them back in your towns because the American people want to work in these factory jobs, that energy is completely gone. Because now we're saying that South Korean people have to come in and work the factory jobs and work at Hyundai. What is that? That's ridiculous. Of course that's not the case. Of course there are American people in Middle America who had factory jobs that left them, who were more than happy to take a factory job at Hyundai. The H1B visa program is supposed to be that these major companies have looked far and wide for American workers and can't find them. So then they get a pass and are allowed to bring in people from the rest of the world to fill jobs that otherwise would not have been filled because Americans aren't willing to take the jobs. It's basically that's how it's supposed to work. But it's basically become a big scam where these big companies are essentially looking to not hire American workers because that comes with regulations, that comes with minimum wage laws, that comes with all this extra steps that you're required to treat them fairly because they could go work somewhere else if you don't. But H1B visas are essentially indentured servitude where you're bringing in these foreign workers, you can treat them like garbage, and you can pay them for much less than you could regular market wage rates for American workers, and they have to stay employed with you. They can't leave or else they're kicked out of the country because they rely on their employer to stay in the country. That's what the H1B visa program is. It's a big scam. It's not good for either side, really. But it's really not good for the American worker who now is having their wages undercut by foreign labor because the big business doesn't want to pay them a regular wage that they would have to pay to an American because of regulations and minimum wage laws. So the energy shifted from defending the American worker and trying to beat back the big business and actually have to make them pay the American workers the minimum wage at least, to now we're saying we actually don't have enough Americans to fill these factory jobs. So if that's the case, if we don't have Americans to fill the factory jobs, if Americans are too dumb to fill the factory jobs, then what's the point of the tariffs? If the tariffs are for bringing factories back and bringing industry back to America, but we just said that Americans are too dumb and too incapable of filling these jobs, then what's the end goal here? This is all incoherent. So it's the lack of messaging. It's the shift in messaging, really, from 2016 to now. You cannot avoid it. It's completely apparent. And this brings me to my next clip here, which is it's enraging, is the fact that we're now considering bringing in 600,000 Chinese students here on student visas to take away university spots from American students. Take a look.
You've said as many as 600,000 Chinese students could come to the United States. Why, sir, is that a pro-MAGA position when so many American kids want to go to school and there are places not for them and these universities are getting rich off Chinese money?
Sure. Never said about China, but we do have a lot of people coming in from China. We always have, China and other countries. We also have a massive system of colleges and universities. And if we were to cut that in half, which perhaps makes some people happy, you would have half the colleges in the United States go out of business.
So what?
Well, I think that's a big deal.
Are they fans
You would have the
of the United States?
Yeah, but you would have, as you know, historically, black colleges and universities would all be out of business. You would have a system of colleges and universities would go down the tubes.
So we're dependent on China to keep our university system going?
But I think it's good to have, I actually think it's good to have outside countries. Look, I want to be able to get along with the world.
They're not the French. They're the Chinese. They spy on us. They steal our intellectual property.
What, do you think the French are better?
Yeah.
I mean, really? I don't know. I'll tell you, I'm not so sure. We've had a lot of problems with the French where we get taxed very unfairly on our technology, where, they put 25% taxes on American products. Look, assuming everyone treats us badly, because that's the way I am, but we take in trillions of dollars from students. The students pay more than double when they come in from most foreign countries. I want to see our school system thrive. But at the same time, I know you and I disagree. We're never going to agree on it, but that's okay.
So you couldn't get to this end point, this end argument with any sort of consistent messaging. Because if for the last 10 years, the case we've been making is that the universities are trash, they're anti-Western, anti-American garbage, and they are basically indoctrinating our students into hating the country, into hating the West, and hating our entire history. If that was the argument for the past 10 years, then how could you have not gotten to the end conclusion that we would be okay with these universities kind of crumbling and making room for something new to rise up and for the market to take hold and bring in something that people actually are happy about? How could you have not gotten to that end position? We're now, as Laura Ingraham correctly points out, the case that's being made is that we now rely on China and foreign countries to prop up our university system. So if the idea is that we're bringing in Chinese students here to go to college here, and then they're imported here and they either go back to China and help out Chinese industry and help China get ahead in whatever it is, AI or manufacturing or whatever they're doing, or they stay here. And like I was saying with the H1B Visa program, they're imported here to take the STEM jobs away from the American students. This is completely dysfunctional, and it's America last. This is not America first. And you slide in this comment, this remark in the middle of the answer of, well, I could cut that in half, and perhaps some people would be happy with that. Who is he talking about there? He's talking about his voters. The voters would be happy with that, but we have to make the universities happy. Where are the priorities? The priorities back in 2016, before we had all the corporate interests around, all the big money around this administration, where we are going to prioritize the American people, the people that are my base, my voters. That is going to be the priority. What's best for them, putting them and the American people first before the elites at the universities. And now the story is that we're prioritizing. He said in this answer, I treat it like a business. He says that later on in this interview. I treat it like a business. We see it like a business. So the argument now is that we see this like a business and we're prioritizing the profits of these colleges and the money for these colleges and keeping them propped up, because that's the job of the federal government, to prop up the colleges, over helping the American people get ahead. And if that means the rest of the world swoops in, takes university spots away from Americans, and gets ahead, so be it, as long as the universities don't collapse. What? Absolutely not. How is that acceptable? No. This is not the messaging that we were looking for back 10 years ago. This is not the messaging that rode him into the White House in 2024. The messaging isn't that we are going to prioritize the elites on the coast at Harvard or Stanford or Yale or Columbia. That wasn't the messaging. But the messaging is supposed to be consistent in that we are investing in our human capital here in America to get ready to industrialize again, to have a manufacturing base in America. But that doesn't work when you're when you're importing 500,000 foreign students in to take the spots away from your American students. This is ridiculous. And that brings me to my next desperate point here to talk about, which is the fact that the housing market, for anyone who's been paying attention at all, this is a common discussion, is that the housing market is completely unaffordable. The average age for a first-time home buyer just went up to 40 years old. This can't be maintained. This is a disaster waiting to happen. And the Trump administration is completely out of ideas for this. And they propose now, according to the housing secretary, I believe, they propose a 50-year mortgage, which, for those who don't know, is just a gift to the big banks, because you're paying like 2 to 3 times the interest over the course of that 50 years to the banks, and you're paying like double the price of the actual house. Take a look at what Donald Trump had to say about this.
Another thing that your administration is trying to tackle, many Americans, the average age of first-time home buyers are now up to age 40, which is sad. The country you and I grew up in.
I inherited that. Look, you have to understand.
Right, but let me get to the question, though, because your housing director has proposed something that has enraged your MAGA friends, which is this 50-year mortgage idea. So a significant MAGA backlash, calling it a giveaway to the banks and simply prolonging the time it would take for Americans to own a home outright. Is that really a good idea?
It's not even a big deal. I mean, you go from 40 to 50 years. And what it means is you pay something less from 30, that some people had a 40 and then now they have a 50. All it means is you pay less per month. You pay it over a longer period of time. It's not like a big factor. It might help a little bit. But the problem was that Biden did this. He increased the interest rates, and I have a lousy Fed person who's going to be gone in a few months.
So if this isn't just the most clear-cut form of World Economic Forum, you'll own nothing and be happy, then I don't know what is. Because this whole 50-year mortgage, by the way, a 50-year mortgage is going to take you like 25, 30 years to even get equity on the home. So you literally own nothing for basically the entirety of this mortgage. You're just renting from the bank, which, by the way, the interest on this, if you say you pay like a $400,000 home, the interest on that's like $700,000 to $800,000. You're paying like double the price of the home just in interest. 2/3 of this purchase is in the interest to the bank. So this doesn't help you at all. You're just renting for 20 more years. And by the way, when he says it in this way that all it does is bring down the monthly payments. No, that's not all. That's factually incorrect. That's not all it does. The interest over time like doubles and triples. The banks are loving this. This isn't helping any of you're paying more over time. You're literally not paying less. And he says in this is not a big deal. 20 years, a 30 to 50 year gap is a major deal. That's 20 more years that you're just renting from the bank. So this is what I'm talking about when I say this is just getting out of touch. You're losing touch with the base that brought you into the White House. And now, out of desperation, you're offering up ideas like 50-year mortgages. And by the way, another act of desperation that we saw in the past couple of days was this $2,000 check that we're floating out there as a possibility from tariff revenue, they say. Supposedly there's tariff revenue, and they're going to give it back to the American people in the form of $2,000 stimulus checks. This is such a dumb idea. If there's actually revenue coming in from the tariffs, then use it to pay off the national debt. If it's not, then what are we talking about here? Because I get a sense that this is probably just going to be printed money, as it always is with all these government projects. It's just going to be printed money from the Federal Reserve. And if everyone gets a $2,000 check, then nobody gets a $2,000 check. And if it is what I think it might be, which is just printing more money at the Fed, then that's just increasing inflation. So this is a desperate attempt to get up in the polls, because if you look at the latest approval ratings, they're the lowest out of the first term and the second term. They're the lowest in these past 2 months that they've ever been. And if we're just going to assess here, if we're going to be realistic here and this isn't me just laying out my grievances here, if we're going to be actually realistic looking forward to 2026, the Republicans are going to get stomped in the midterms. At this point, I think it might even be a done deal. Because what do they have to run? They can't run on affordability because everything's gotten more expensive. All these complex charts, they're just doing Bidenomics all over again, where they're telling you, actually, you're too stupid to get it. The economy is actually really good. He says it in this interview multiple times. He talks about how the economy is the best it's ever been. I don't know maybe it is in the White House. I don't know, or maybe it is the Fed, where they're just printing money over and over again. No, it's not actually. The economy isn't as great as it's ever been. This is just, and then they pull out, like Biden did back during that's why Bidenomics is a pejorative now for out of touch economics. They would pull out this complex graph about, actually, if you look at it, compare it to this, then you're actually just too stupid to understand. You're the American people looking at their grocery prices and their gas prices, at their health insurance and their child care. They're actually not seeing it correctly. It's about their perception. They're just too dumb to understand that if you look at it this complex economic way, that we're actually doing very good. When you have to talk to your voters like that, then you know you're losing. You know it actually isn't that great. And if you're talking like that going into an election year in 2026, the midterm elections, then you know it's not going to go great. So if you look forward to 2026, this is probably the end of the term already. We've had our year. Now we're in midterms. If we're going to complain now about deportations, what, you think they're going to ramp up deportations ahead of the midterms and risk that causing problems? Of course they're not. You think they're going to... By the way, I don't know, everyone's forgotten. I know this has gotten memory hold somehow. But by the way, Tulsi Gabbard a couple months ago said that they have enough evidence to indict Obama for treason. Forgot about that? You think they're going to... But now that we've wasted our year, do you think we're actually going to indict anyone like Obama or Fauci now and cause some rough times in the political atmosphere? You think we're actually going to bring people like that to justice? Or do we think we're going to play it safe from here on out for the next year, try and get through the midterms with as little damage as possible, and then give it 4 months after the midterms, half the cabinet is going to be running for president, and then that's that. And all I can say is that I think we have to think beyond just naturally it being J.D. Vance, because there is a chance here. There is a chance that we can get somebody in the primary, like a Thomas Massey, like a Marjorie Taylor Greene, who has their finger on the pulse of the country, who's younger, who understands what's going on. I'm not saying J.D. Vance isn't young. I'm saying J.D. Vance is stuck in this position where he can't be realistic because he has to keep his loyalties to the administration. Somebody like Marjorie Taylor Greene or Thomas Massey, who doesn't have those loyalties that they have to stick to, can actually be honest and address the real issues that the country is facing and put an America First policy prescription in place to solve these problems. That is what I'm hoping for. That's what I'm advocating for. And I think that's what needs to happen, because we all know we can't let it... I mean, and it's not to get into partisan politics, which I think is so stupid, but if a Democrat gets in, we know what's going to happen. It's just going to be... It's going to be trash policy through the roof, whether it's AOC or Gavin Newsom or whoever. And what do you think, J.D. Vance? What's he going to... No, trust me, this time we'll really do it. Like, what's he running on? Because I think we need to go back to the basics here of what did we do in 2016? What was the pathway to victory in 2016? It started off by defeating the Republican establishment. Now, all those same figures that were defeated just back 10 years ago are now still lurking in the shadows, ready to take over once Trump is gone. And if we're gonna keep this conservative coalition alive, then it has to be based on defeating the establishment. Because if the 2028 is establishment Republican and establishment Democrat, then I'm not going to vote, because what's the point? Because it's just two sides of the same coin. So we have to be creative here and try and pick somebody outside of this realm of J.D. Vance, like establishment hack, who's surrounded by big donors and Peter Thiel and big money, or someone like Gavin Newsom, who's just as corrupt, just as surrounded by big money. And it's just, at that point, who cares? So we actually have to prioritize getting an America First candidate into office or into the Republican nomination in 2028. That's our only option. So that's where we'll be maintaining our focuses here on this show. And that's why I think we'll end it off for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please be sure to like and subscribe. And please be sure to go to my Instagram, X, and Spotify accounts as well and give all those a follow. I really appreciate that. And we'll see you guys in the next episode. Have a good day.
Americanism, not globalism.
I am not a slave. I am a free citizen.
There should be no Federal Reserve System.
Only America first.